The summer is here, people. And this is such a special occasion for so many different reasons because I've got my first four-man panel that I've had, I think, since the Fantastic Four panel was the last one that I had one of these things where we got Luke, we got Kristen, we got Mac, M and K, both together on the podcast for the first time since the 200th episode. And guys, we're here. This is a historic moment. We are here to review the first summer kickoff movie that is not an MCU movie. I don't count 20 and 2021 because there were no movies and every movie went to streaming that year. But again, we had, when movies sort of came back in 2022, we had Multiverse of Madness this slot in 2022. And we had Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 in this slot last year. But this time we have David Leitch's and Ryan Gosling's The Fall Guy. And we're going to get into this movie, but I think it's safe to say that this is going to be very, very high on all of our lists going into the end of the year. Luke, Mac, and Kristen are here. Let's get this started. This is the Talkin TV podcast. Luke, you and I have talked so many times about just whenever they make movies that feel like they are just for us, usually they involve some sort of big, extravagant, over-the-top action set pieces, some charismatic movie stars that are winking at the screen. And I mean, once again, I feel like they nailed it. I feel like of all the movies that we've talked about that are for us, I feel like this one is just the most for us. Would you tend to agree?
I think it's up there with Ambulance, definitely, and Bullet Train, of course, another Leitch film. But yeah, it's just everything that I want from a movie. It's Ryan Gosling. It's him being a goof. It's just meta enough to the point where I like it. It was like, okay, you guys didn't cross the line. So yeah, it ticked all the boxes for me.
See, you are right. There usually is a line as to when things do get too meta, but I would approach that from a different standpoint. I would say that there is. When you fully understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And in that case, that's when you could go all out, like just all out, nonstop with the jokes, the constant winking and camera. Like there is a balancing act versus, as we were talking about, Kristen, before the stream started, when you have something like The Bubble, where that was just a movie where it was clear that nobody understood the assignment. That was just another Judd Apatow attempt at just having a bunch of actors in one room riffing. And unfortunately, that's not what's needed for a comedy along those lines. So, yeah, this is a movie that stars Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt. It's directed by David Leitch. It's written by Drew Pearce, which is a fact that will largely go overlooked for the simple fact that Drew Pearce's last movie that he directed, Hotel Artemis, which came out in 2018, which was kind of another one of these attempts at a Tarantino knockoff with a bunch of what he thought was big name stars, where in reality, no one in that movie really understood exactly what kind of it was. So you had this weird jarring over the tone, like a lot of places that were over the top. And what's it called? But not this time. Not this time. This time we have just there aren't even enough words that I have to describe just how spectacular this was, and just how special this was, and just how obviously I've made it no secret that it's become a lot harder for movies, specifically movies made by that of Hollywood, to really impress me, and it's even harder for them to make movies that I feel like specifically will appeal to me personally. But this is just one where they just nailed it. They just checked all of the boxes. This movie started. I knew I was going to love this movie when even before the movie started, the bit that they always have now, which is where they basically have to put the director and the star of the movie, and have them record a bit basically thanking the audience for coming to see the movie, because Hollywood knows that audiences 9 out of 10 times are not going to show up opening night or even show up to the theater to actually watch it. And even that bit between Ryan Gosling and David Leitch was kind of incredible before the Universal logo kicks in, and that the soundtrack of the 2020s, if you ask me, kicks off. I'm already saying this right now. This is my first hot take that you're going to hear on this. This is the best soundtrack of any movie of the 2020s. This beats Suicide Squad. This beats Babylon. This beats Guardians Volume 3. I mean, Babylon's technically more score-based than soundtrack-based, so I digress. But yeah, this soundtrack just kicked ass for so many different reasons. Kristen, is this one of your favorite movies of the year? And I mean, yeah, just is this, where would you say this places so far?
Okay. Ooh, excuse me. This is definitely one of my favorites of the year. I was just looking at my letterbox and I was like, all right, where do I place this? It's literally sitting at like number 2 at this point because I just loved what it was and it gave me something that I love going to the movies for. And that's an epic experience. And that's what I felt watching and sitting throughout this entire film with the cast, the music, everything that was like presented on the screen, I just adored and loved. And I pretty much had the same feeling when I walked out of seeing Dune 2, like where I like was like, oh my gosh, this was worth, almost the $15 worth, movie price ticket where I'm like, yep, I want to pay, like my full money for this. And this is pretty much what I got and I wanted. And I'm very pleased. I'm so happy it delivered in every single aspect.
Yeah, exactly. Couldn't agree more. Mac, you've been on mute for a little bit. Matt, once again, videoing in from a location that is not his house. This is the second time after Iron Claw. Mac, buddy, give us your rundown of Fall Guy. Thoughts?
So yeah, we're live Big Y right now, getting some groceries with the Mama Mac over there. But yeah, no, I think with Fall Guy, I mean, I wouldn't say it's my favorite of the year. It's definitely up there, probably top 3. I haven't done my review yet, but just being a love letter to just the stunt workers and everything, because I do have a lot of respect for the stunt people, because they put their lives on the line for this kind of like a dangerous job. And pretty much Ryan Gosling said like this is the film we made to get stunts the best category at the Oscars, and I think that the Academy needs to think about that because the stunt workers don't get enough praise for it. Like Keanu Reeves and Chad Celeste have been trying to get that for years, especially with the John Wick movies. And I just think that the Fall Guy is a good like launcher for that. But the movie itself was amazing. Me and Ryan Gosling, we share a birthday, so I have to support him no matter what. But I think it was just super good, and I laughed way too hard. Like going to a movie when it's a meta movie and it has a lot of meta commentary on it, and my dad won't get a lot of it, but I laughed a lot on a lot of the jokes, and I did like the opening intro when it was the showcase of different movies, and they had like the Nobody reference. It was pretty good, so I like Fall Guy. I wouldn't say it's the best so far. Probably like in my top 5.
So I've got, like I said, I had a lot of hot takes coming out of this movie because, like I said, it's so rare that a movie in the 2020s can make me smile that much, and just cause me to feel joy, especially at a lot of times where I will admit movies in general, especially new movies, do not allow me to feel as much joy as I would like usually with them. And
absolutely agree.
The minute that I knew that I was going to love this movie was when I mean, there were a couple moments really in the first hour. And that's the thing. This is actually like a 2-hour long movie that utilizes its length very well. But when you have Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt in a split screen where Emily Blunt, as the director, is talking about whether she wants to use a split screen in the movie.
Funny.
I was like, yes. Oh, yeah. This movie's the Tropic Thunder of the 2020s.
Yes, yeah, I was just going to bring that up.
And I'm saying it right now. And I think that anybody who says that it isn't is missing a couple things. One, the fact that I'm not saying that this quality-wise is better than Tropic Thunder because Tropic Thunder occupies a very, very specific point in the culture, But I will say that, especially given the fact that it's been almost 20 years, it's been about 14, 15 years since Tropic Thunder this year. And the fact that we really have not had a movie that comes close to it, and the fact that this one comes close and not only kind of delivers in terms of the meta commentary on Hollywood and just how shitty it is and how difficult it is to get these movies made because of all of the different agendas that are involved, but also the fact that it goes so extra on the action as well. Like, I also just did want to talk about David Leitch because obviously we are going to talk about Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt, and obviously so, but David Leitch and kind of how he's low-key becoming one of my favorite directors. And he's slowly becoming one of those people that every time I see his name on a movie alongside James Gunn, I know I'm going to love it. And I'm just 100,000% confident. You don't need to sell me on anything extra. And if anything, I don't want to know really anything extra because I feel like if I know anything else, like for example, Fall Guy was one of those ones where, again, I feel like I'd seen the trailer over 100 times. And it was getting to the point where I'm like, okay, this is just starting to irritate me enough. Am I going to really enjoy this as much? And I'm really, really glad that I did. But yeah, Leitch is somebody who again, former stuntman, right, was paired up with Stahelski for the first John Wick, but then after Stahelski stayed and made the rest of the John Wick movies, Leach kind of wanted to go off and do his own thing, and he did something really interesting where he did, and he did an original action movie based on a comic book, but an original action movie with Charlize Theron. Then he does Deadpool 2, which again, I would sort of almost make an argument that, again, taking aside the pop culture elements of the first Deadpool, I think Deadpool 2 is technically a better made movie and also a very, very underrated sequel. But also I feel like that's kind of where a lot of his trapping started, in terms of like, that's where, you know, again, working on a bigger budget and working with a massive movie star and having that kind of level of self-referentiality and self-understanding of that type of thing. You know, obviously Hobbs and Shaw is a slight miss, but I don't blame that on him. Especially with all the stuff coming out about The Rock. But I mean, after Bullet Train 2 years ago, where that movie just completely surprised me in the summer of 2022, which is one of the worst summers in recent years. The dude has proved himself. The dude has proved himself as just a bona fide, solid action director, and it's just made me very, very excited for what he's got next. Like, he completely understands everything that he's doing here, and you can tell that, especially with the stunt team in this movie led by Winston Duke near the end, you can tell that, like, yeah, he's got a special place in his heart for stunt guys, with the level of love and admiration that he shows with them. And like you guys said, the fact that this movie is pretty much going to be the sole reason why they are now finally, after years of them being overlooked, adding a best stunts category to the Oscars, which, let's face it, at this point, with the level of, again, with the type of filmmaking that they use to make these types of movies, really should be one of the biggest categories that gets honored. I mean, Luke, what are your thoughts on David Leitch as a director and his most recent couple of efforts?
I think the best thing I can say about David Leitch is that if I were to make movies, I would like to make movies like David Leitch makes movies. They're just not quite turn your brain off, but like they're easy to digest. They're fun. There's action plenty. It's colorful. It just sparks and glitters everywhere. It is just a good time, a real romp. And we were talking about Ungentlemanly Warfare a few weeks ago. Same exact feeling. Like, I left theater feeling a lot better than I did going into the theater, and that's just like the best thing a movie can do.
Yes, absolutely. Like, and I would say that, like, the thing about Gentlemanly Warfare and why I would put this a step above it is because Gentlemanly Warfare still has, like, the British element to it, and it's not as self-referential. I don't know what it is about me, but there's just something to it where, again, when you get something like a Tropic Thunder, like a 22 Jump Street, where it feels like everybody is in on the joke, and they're constantly winking and nodding to the camera with all the references, but they're still able to keep a straight face, you know? And they're not just, like, turning and breaking the fourth wall. Deadpool gets away with it because he's got a mask on, so you can't really tell his facial expression, so he's still, quote-unquote, acting. But there's this very specific thing in comedy where everybody can be in on the joke, but if the actors themselves break and lose track of the fact that they're in a comedy and start laughing, the illusion is broken. But it's when they're able to keep such a straight face. It's why the Leslie Nielsen comedies from back in the 80s were all as incredible as they were, because he is playing it so straight that he makes it funnier. And that actually brings me to my point about Gosling. I'll come back to Leitch in a minute because I still do have some more points on that. But the thing about Gosling and, like, why I loved him so much in this movie, and, like, I love Gosling. I think I wrote this on my Letterboxd review. I think he's officially my favorite movie star. I never like to say that I have a favorite actor because that goes into different levels. And the truth of the matter is, I feel like the thing about acting specifically is that I like different things about different people. It's why I have the Hall of Fame with Dustin, so that we can, like, honor and pay homage to different actors for their own unique thing that they each bring. But as a movie star, right, which movie stars serve a very specific role in a way that actors do not. That's why I always need to reference the difference between the two, because people oftentimes confuse that. Is that Gosling is somebody who fulfills all of the quotes needed to be a movie star, but also is just an incredible actor on top of that. But again, he understands the assignment. He's having the winking and nodding, but he's playing it so straight and so dry. Like, he's played it like, you know, slightly goofy and The Nice Guys. He's played it like very, like, you know, assholey and and like, oh, I'm the smartest guy in the room in Big Short. You know, he does the smooth suaveness with also the heart of gold and Crazy Stupid Love. I mean, the man literally has just seemingly unlimited range. And everything that he's been in, he's never missed. Exactly. That's the next thing that's coming out, and I can't friggin' wait for it. From again, like, and he just keeps upping the levels of people that he's working with. You know, again, you know, Damien Chazelle, Adam McKay, Shane Black, what's it called now? David Leitch, even the Russos with The Gray Man, which I will admit, of all the recent movies, The Gray Man is probably the worst demonstration of his talent, but he even makes that work somehow. I know that everybody hates The Gray Man, but I enjoyed that movie. I don't love it, but I enjoyed it for what it was. And he is so good that he even makes that work. Kristen, is Ryan Gosling one of your favorite movie stars, and why?
He's not only one of my favorite movie stars, but like one of my favorite actors. Like I consider him like, you know, worthy of those standards because in each project he does something different and he gets to play all these characters that are just different from the next. And his comedic chop show, whether you watch him, like you said, the Nice Guys, is very charming and lovable, and Crazy Stupid Love. Like there's so much to his characters that he plays that it's like really exciting to see. And then when he gets to work with like big name directors, it's just as crazy and wonderful to watch. So I love, you know, just about anything he does. Like even The Gray Man, he makes The Gray Man worthy of a watch just for that alone. Everything else, you know, is but like, you know,
well,
there's other stuff.
Him and Chris Evans too, but
you know, but
yeah.
Ryan Gosling, I want to say, is better than Chris Evans. Putting that out there, but
I think it's a 1-2 punch. I think it's the two of them that make that work. I think if it was just one or the other, that movie would be even more unbearable. But
yeah, Ryan Gosling is definitely one of my favorites. I mean, you can see him; he's literally in my room right now. So yeah. So I love him. So, you know, just as much as I love Jake Gyllenhaal and Keanu Reeves, you know, he deserves to be like a Hall H kind of presentation kind of guy. Throwing that in there, Hall H.
Yeah. For sure, like I said, lots of references to the fan base. Yeah, no, not to step on mine and Dustin's Ryan Gosling Hall of Fame, which will be on YouTube sometime in the next couple of weeks, but the thing about it is that he can, we talked about this when we were talking about, like, again, the fact that, you know, he was kind of known as the guy who did The Notebook for a while, but people forget that before The Notebook, he had Remember the Titans, which is kind of a nothing
and Mickey Mouse Club.
Right, and Mickey Mouse Club. But I'm talking like in terms of movies, right? He's in Remember the Titans in like a quick like role, like nothing role that he makes so memorable just based on his charm alone. The fact that that Notebook is as good as it is because of him. And then again, I talked about this as well. The fact that Half Nelson comes out, he's 26, he's my age that I am right now, and he becomes the 7th youngest person to ever get a Best Actor nomination. That's insane, especially because we know how the Oscars are when it comes to honoring young talent, you know? Like, I think that I'm pretty sure the only person recently that was younger than him that got the Best Actor nom was Chalamet for Call Me By Your Name. I think that was the most recent youngest one. Somebody might have to fact check me on that. But yeah, my point is that he's effortlessly talented. He always understands the assignment. I don't think he's ever given a bad performance now that I think about it. You know, like there's still a couple of efforts that I still need to watch from him. I still need to watch Lars and the Real Girl. I still need to watch Place Beyond the Pines. I still need to watch Blue Valentine. But I don't think he's ever missed. Also, just to show like what type of guy he is, the fact that he took like a 5-year gap off during COVID to, like, you know, take care of his kids that he has with Eva Mendes, like he's awesome. He's completely awesome. And he's also got some killer one-liners, some killer motions. He does a fucking double middle finger as with the X as he falls backwards out of a helicopter. And just the fact that, like, he gets tossed. I'm really trying to think because the physicality that he brings to the performance too, where he's kind of getting ping-ponged around with all the stunts, and he kind of is just like so effortless with the kung fu, but is again pulling a Brad Pitt from Bullet Train, where he's kind of the reluctant hero. It's so perfect and it's so effortless, and he understands the assignment. Mac, talk about Ryan Gosling in this movie and how awesome he is.
I think with Ryan Gosling, he's definitely one of those actors where you have to know how to use him, because the whole stereotype with him of being like, oh, he's boring and everything like that. And like, no. I mean, my all-time favorite movie with him is Drive. And if you look at it, Fall Guy could be a prequel to Drive because he's a stunt driver in Drive and everything like that. So that's like my head canon, but I think he's awesome in this. He definitely is kind of like the Brad Pitt character when it comes to like the reluctant hero. Because in Bullet Train, Brad Pitt was like, I don't want to do this, I just want to go home and have you face. But Ryan Gosling was absolutely fantastic in it. And I think he gives it his all. He just never dogs or anything. He gives 110% whatever role he does. And the Fall Guy, I think he is just amazing in this. And he's low key funny. Like he's one of those few actors who has like good comedic timing. Especially like it's just the way that he reacts and just kind of talks. It's just funny to me. But he is he's great in this. I love him. And I think that with Barbie being big that it was and he winning a few awards for that, he'll definitely have more of like it could be. I know they said it never happened, but he maybe might consider joining the MCU as a role or something that could work for him. But that's what I think about it.
Look, I think we all know at this point that anybody joining the MCU it's not quite, but it's a little bit of a death sentence in terms of a Hollywood career. Just ask Jenna Ortega recently. But what I will say is that Gosling, again, the reason why I compare him to Leslie Nielsen is, again, he's one of those people who, again, he never breaks. He never, ever breaks. Mac, that's a great point that you brought up. The fact that this could be technically a prequel to Drive, only a lot more goofy and self-aware, obviously. Again, just the points where, and I love how, too, the fact that I'm watching this and I'm like, the joke of the matter being that he is playing a stunt guy who has to do all of this shit, but all of these stunts that we're seeing in the movie are done by a stunt guy. So, and I just thought that just the self-referential metatextuality was great. Honestly, I really think this puts Deadpool to shame in terms of the breaking the fourth wall. I really do, because this just got.
I don't know. I feel like Deadpool, it works for the fourth wall breaking, because it is like, that is his character. With this one, I feel like it's more of just like, hey, you die-hard movie fan, you're gonna get this reference, right? The commies, the normies aren't gonna get that, right? So
right, but again, this is a movie that feels made for us, and what I've found,
it's made for film action
yes.
people like us who want to absorb and get lost in the story and get the pop culture references, get the movie references.
Right.
So I'm kind of with you on this.
Exactly. We always need a little bit of extra incentive now for our movies. And I think that this movie, truly understanding that, is what sends it over the edge a little bit and gives it that little special touch, if you will. What's it called? Now, also, like I said, there's this other subtle point that I brought up before the movie started and that I want all of your guys' take on, which is where this is the second effort now, or maybe it's the third. I don't know. This is the second effort now where we've seen a movie that is set around the making of a fake movie, and where the fake movie is very obviously a parody of the Snyder Cut, but the fake movie that they're making in it is kind of looks like, I kind of want to watch it because it's like so dumb, but it kind of does look good, between what is it, Metal Storm in this one, and then Dawn of the Seven in The Boys. I mean, we obviously know what they're poking fun at, but am I the only one that kind of wants to watch those movies? But I will also digress and say that it is also indicative of a larger problem in Hollywood, which is that Hollywood, unfortunately, when it comes to movies that are not like superhero movies now, that are actually good, well-made, big-budget movies that aren't like indie darlings or Oscar bait movies, the only types of movies that Hollywood really knows how to do are movies about Hollywood. And I personally think that in terms of movies made about Hollywood that are in that canon, I still have to go through and make that list, recently. I'm not going to put Birdman in there because Birdman is much more so about the mentality of being a movie star that's trying to be an actor, as opposed to.
I think that's what kind of stands on its own, kind
right.
of like on the stands of a Babylon and stuff. This is the comedic efforts
right.
of it, and
exactly,
the joke of what it is.
Right, Tropic Thunder still holds the top spot for me in that. I think that Babylon does deserve a spot, and then Singing in the Rain has to be very, very high up there, because that's also kind of where that's kind of the first one of these types of movies, these inside Hollywood baseball kind of movies. But I really think that for me personally, this ranks up high, both because A, there's not that many of these movies made, B, the fact that when these movies are made, they are usually so rare that they always usually stand out and feel like an extra special treat. But also C, just because I really think that this is one of the best. Just I really don't think there's a moment in this movie where I didn't laugh or a joke that didn't miss. We haven't talked about the actual plot of the movie, so we should probably actually do that as well, because this is one of those instances where the plot is the weakest element, but because of the nature of the movie, that almost doesn't matter. Where, again, again, if you're going to compare this to what this movie is kind of originally riffing on, which is Tropic Thunder, if you really, really want to go in depth with that, okay, technically, yes, the plot of Tropic Thunder is a little bit better, but only just. It's kind of around the same thing, where Tropic Thunder, they're trying to get the movie made. This one, there's a lot of extra stuff that gets thrown in, but at the end of the day, the incentive is still to finish the movie. There's just a lot of extra crap that gets thrown in on top of it, and there's like a Nice Guys-esque noir subplot that's also driving the bulk of this movie. And even though the quote-unquote twist at the end is kind of really dumb and superficial and shallow, it kind of works because we're talking about Hollywood movie stars, you know, and the fact that they are all so selfish and so self-indulgent and are always getting their success on the backs of people who actually are willing to go out there and do the dangerous stuff and actually do the work, like the stunt guys. I thought that in that sense, that's where this movie just thrived and shined completely, because because with the Aaron Taylor Johnson and the Hannah Waddingham characters, right? Those two are technically quote unquote the bad guys of the movie, but they're so dumb and incompetent and so selfish and full of themselves, and like going off of all of this like horrible rhetoric that Hollywood is finally now started to get past, that has driven in the last couple of years, that it's so dumb that it all completely works. And the fact that every time it cuts to a new action sequence, it like starting at a certain point, I'd say probably when Ryan Gosling first goes to Aaron Taylor Johnson's apartment to find him and he gets attacked by Teresa Palmer, and one of the most absolutely ludicrous scenes ever. Like, there's always this like kind of like sigh where it's like, are we really doing this? Where the movie has this extra level of understanding where it's like, yeah, these scenes are dumb and there's no reason for them to happen, but we're gonna give them to you anyways because it's fun and we know that's what you came in expecting to get, and we're gonna go extra over the top with the choreography. And, what's it called, Luke? What are your thoughts on that?
Before that, I just want to mention about that Metal Storm was everything I needed Rebel Moon to be.
Yes, that was the other one I was thinking of. Yeah.
I was watching this like, but anyway, I do agree. The plot is the especially the latter half, the connecting everything is not amazing, but that didn't matter to me because I had bought into the action and I had bought into the romance between the two leads. And that was enough to coast the rest of the way because the action is great. There's a lot of set pieces in this.
Yeah, there are.
I kept watching it. I'm like, okay, this is the last one. No, and there's 3 more after that.
That's right. Every time you think that that's going to be the last one, there's so more. And I mean, the list just keeps going on and on. Ryan Gosling literally is about to get lit on fire and is such a badass that he ends up literally, as the dude lights the light, spits the oil on him and lights him on fire. Like, he literally spits fire in this movie. Like, can you get much better than that? And that's not even getting into, again, the boat chasing, which is the reference back to him being his first job being on Miami Vice, the TV show, which is a joke that will probably go over everybody's head because they're like, how could he possibly be that old? Because if you got to assume that, like, if this movie is taking place, it probably doesn't take place in the 2020s, it probably takes place in the 2010s. Like, you got to assume that if he was on Miami Vice in the 80s, that would easily put him in his 50s and 60s. But Ryan Gosling as an actor is only 44 years old. So that joke was so subtle that it's definitely going to fly over everybody's heads, but it was so effing good. And then literally to driving the boat backwards to the fight with him and Emily Blunt in the trailer, where Emily Blunt where he's complimenting Emily Blunt on how good of the fighting she did. He's like, yeah, the pen in the leg was great. You know, you pulled it out right before the egg poisoning would probably set in. So that was good. And then to the final action set piece with, what's it called? Where they're trying to get the confession out of Aaron Taylor Johnson. Like, it's set up and paid off so beautifully. I could be here all day if I was listing off jokes, but we haven't even talked about what is probably the most underrated element in the movie, which is not only did this movie pull off the action comedy elements, not only did this movie pull off the movie star elements, not only did this movie pull off the self-referential, making fun of Hollywood elements, this movie's low-key one of the best romance movies that I've seen in quite a while, because, like, the chemistry between Gosling and Emily Blunt is so effing good.
And it's funny how we have them come together because it's Oppenheimer and Barbie and the romance that comes together.
Literally, yes, exactly. It's a come full circle. The references never end. It never ends. could not agree more. But yeah, like, because I have always been a proponent, and the movie is even understanding of this. I have always been this proponent of the fact that romance in these types of movies almost never works and is always a distraction. But again, the people who are involved understand the assignment, and they
But it drives the story to keep it going, so that romance really thrives and off of the chemistry of the two of them. So
exactly. No, I couldn't agree more. It's literally the thing of where like the romance kind of is the basis of the plot, because the way that this movie opens up, it is literally Gosling's attempts to like get back with Emily Blunt and in her good graces, but in a really wholesome and not at all like mean-spirited way that it works, and it makes all of the quote-unquote dumb moments where in any other movie you would be like, why are you not calling the police? Why are you like not bringing this to the authorities? And it's that like romance that makes it work and really makes all of their moments earned, and even a lot of the moments where I'm just waiting to be like, oh, this is dumb, oh, this is cliched, oh, of course they have to do the, oh, he's gonna be late for karaoke, all that, like all those moments, they still work within the context of the movie. And I mean, we also haven't talked about Winston Duke a whole lot, but like Winston Duke is low-key Ryan Gosling's like sidekick / head stuntman, who also just references his only role in the movie is to literally just quote movies. And every time you have a character in a movie that just quotes movies, I know he's automatically going to be one of my favorites. And there's a particularly great action sequence near the end where they're fighting off these guys, and Winston Duke is fighting these guys, and every time he takes them out, he quotes them back. When he literally, like, flipped the guy backwards and went, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, I immediately thought of you. I'm like, that's a Mac moment right there. It was fucking perfect.
That adds to the best part, because it's like, I'll use a reference in Grand Theft Auto 5, one of the main characters, Michael, he's like a big old school movie fan. He gets to work with the producer, and one of the running jokes in the game when he talks to him is that the producer just gives him all the quotes of like the in-universe movies. And I like when they do stuff like that, because it makes you feel like it adds depth to the character. And obviously he's quoting a lot of like, in Winston Duke is like, he's always good in any movie he does, and in this one he was awesome. And especially I like the part when he's like, nope, I call it tomahawk. He's like, shit, is this plastic? And he's like, they just had like it was like funny, and it made it like funny with that. And like, even with the funny thing of the romance, like I'm not even a big romance person, but this was actually like one of the better like romance in an action movie, because in a lot of action movies you kind of have the guy not be vulnerable to get the girl back. It's usually the girl that, but this scene of Ryan Gosling was like, pretty much saying like, yeah, we do the you don't like the thumbs up bullshit, but I gotta tell you, like, I was thumbs down, and I didn't want you to see me like that. And I actually was like, oh my god, like there's actually heart to this movie. Like it actually gives it a little bit more heart like behind it. And so look, Luke said about Rebel Moon and everything, and like with recency bias, I feel like Metal Storm is definitely like a big kind of fuck you to Rebel Moon, because I'm not gonna lie, I hated Rebel Moon. Rebel Moon is like one of the worst movies I've seen this year.
Yeah, it's not good. Specifically the part 2, it's not good. It's not good.
You finally watched it though?
I did, and I finished it, and I still don't hate it the way that everybody else does, but I'm very disappointed in Snyder for not having learned any lessons from the whole DC debacle, and now for just kind of leaning into that as part of the marketing trend for Netflix, and then can't even really deliver on the individual parts. So like, it's a whole thing. I don't want to spoil this conversation by talking about Rebel Moon anymore. But so Mac, what were you saying?
I just think that with the romance is pretty good, and then the Winston Duke was funny, and I think when you do the romance right, and it's not creepy, because like, in a way it happens because he has an accident, and it's more of like, we've all been there where we've had something that happened, and you have friends that will be there for you. And Emily Blunt, she seems like in the beginning that she's down for Ryan Gosling's character, and like, the accident happens, he just doesn't want her to see, because we never want to have anyone see us at like our most vulnerable. We kind of push away, and I feel like that's a good way to do that, because he has PTSD from his accident. He's not confident doing a lot of stuff, so I think that just added great depth to the character. Like there's a lot of like, it's weird with the Fall Guy, because like when you're going into it, you're thinking it's just like, oh, it's just an action movie romance, but like when you start like thinking about it, you actually kind of start peeling off. There's more layers to this movie than you realize, to be honest with you.
I couldn't agree more, especially given the fact that you're right. So much of the time with these action movies, it feels like they're trying to, strip away all of the emotion and romance and heart, ironically, which is the point that is also brought up in this movie. And but in this one, you're right. They're bringing it back to the fact that these people are human, and the fact that they're doing all this dumb shit for a reason, which is the fact that they do genuinely want to get back into each other's good graces, because Gosling obviously had this kind of rock solid reputation, and he had this like genuine love and connection with her. And the fact that the reason why he left in the first place was because he felt like he let her down, and the fact that he thought he screwed that up. And then obviously obviously, she didn't know that, and she thought that he just ghosted her, and they obviously had a good connection. So she's kind of rightfully pissed at the beginning. And then it all comes full circle at the end when the reveal happens at the end, which is just so awesome. And Gosling's reaction is so pitch perfect, because even when you think that he's going to go full on meta and start winking at the camera, he once again has the genuine human reaction where he's fucking pissed. He's like, so wait, this whole time I thought that I screwed up that stunt when you were trying to kill me because you thought I was hogging your spotlight? Like, what? And he full on roasts Aaron Taylor Johnson for just how stupid and self-indulgent that he is. And that's not even getting into Aaron Taylor Johnson and Hannah Waddingham's part, which Aaron Taylor Johnson, first of all, the fact that he's doing probably one of the best Matthew McConaughey impressions that I've seen recently. And like, it's so friggin' obvious, but like they're playing into that, like kind of as him as the self-indulgent movie star. Aaron Taylor Johnson is a guy who, it feels like, in a weird way, kind of did a very smart thing. He hasn't been in a lot of movies throughout the decade, really, since he broke out with Kick-Ass. But like, I feel like he very rightfully like stayed away from the spotlight after Kick-Ass until he like transitioned and became more of an adult. And then obviously he had the blockbuster rat, and he had that weird back and forth with Godzilla and Age of Ultron, where he's married to Elizabeth Olsen in one movie, and then he's twin sister and brother with her in the next movie. And I know that was really poor timing on Hollywood's part, but it's still weird whenever you think about the coincidence. But then you have Bullet Train a couple years ago, which, if you ask me, was his audition for Bond, because he is just so unbelievably good in that movie. Not to mention the movie that I thought he should have been nominated for an Oscar for, which is, and frankly should have won for, which is Nocturnal Animals. But like, he's kind of a chameleonic actor. And it frustrates me that we only really get to see him in things a couple of years, because this is just once again a reminder of just how awesome he is in everything. And the fact that, like, I mean, it's pretty obvious from the get-go that he's gonna be the bad guy, but the way that they the way that they the way that they build up to that, and kind of how they portray him like as this ridiculous, like, so I'm like, also just the back and forth between him and Gosling, I'm like, I almost want a movie, like a buddy movie between him and Gosling. Also the fact that the two of them are so effortless that you wouldn't even realize the fact that there's a decade between the two of them. Aaron Taylor Johnson's 34 and Ryan Gosling's 44. That's insane when you think about that. But Kristen, what did you think of Aaron Taylor Johnson's part in this movie?
Well, I just want to point out there that this is the second time him and David Leitch have worked together. Just acknowledgement to
Bullet Train, yeah.
Bullet Train. So shout out to that, because he was really great in that. And then he's also really good in this. I liked him in his role. And he kind of plays that ego side in Hollywood. So, and I liked what he brought.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And then the Hannah Waddingham is like the evil, ironically British like movie producer who is like
and
only
she's kind of playing the part of what you saw in like Tropic Thunder with Tom Cruise.
The Tom Cruise part, but I would say Tom Cruise still has that trope.
Yeah, he still's got the edge to that, but still, it's just as good.
Yeah, with what I still consider to be Tom Cruise's best and most chameleonic performance, with only like 2-3 minutes of screen time, not even as like the Harvey Weinstein stand-in. Luke, what did you think of Aaron Taylor Johnson, and again, like the specific poking fun at the institutions of Hollywood?
Yeah, I did appreciate how the hero of the movie is a stunt guy, and the villains are the actors and the producers, always getting in the way of everything.
Yep.
Aaron Taylor Johnson, he's sneaky good. Like, he's not in a lot of things, but whenever he is, he's really good in it. And like Bullet Train, he's like the best part of that, arguably.
Mm-hmm.
If he does land Bond, that'll be great for him, I think. Depending on what they do with the whole new saga, whatever. And I hope he's in more David Leitch movies. I suspect he will be, whatever his next project may be. And yeah, he's the perfect stand-in for, like, you know, a Tom Cruise or whatever they poke fun at, like actors who do their own stunts.
And trust me, they do plenty. They poke plenty of fun at Tom Cruise in this as well. Yeah,
they even reference him like directly at one point. So yeah, that was part of the wonderful meta-ness of this movie.
Yeah, and I love how they're even commenting. They even managed to sneak in some digs at AI, where like Ryan Gosling is in like the feature at first, and he's like, "Wow, the facial reconstruction technology has gotten really good." And he's like, "Yeah, you know, we basically, we take all the images of you and then we put it into this in order to create like a full-on deepfake replica. People do it on the internet all the time." And he's like, "Yeah, well,
Yeah, and I like how in one of the scenes, like it's when they're doing the car flip, like the VFX supervisor is like, "Hey, we can do this in VFX." Just like
that was great.
no,
That was
we are doing it for
awesome.
real.
Again, just this movie, it understood the assignment. It understood absolutely everything. Mac, what did you think of Aaron Taylor Johnson again? That where they specifically like were poking fun at the Hollywood higher ups with those sequences in terms of just always getting in the way of the craft people, the people who actually do the work.
Well, I feel like that, comparing with Chopper Thunder, like there's definitely a lot of in jokes. So they definitely got some inspiration. So I wouldn't be surprised if his character was actually based on a couple different people, like how Kirk Lazarus was making fun of Daniel Day-Lewis. So I wouldn't be surprised this was making maybe fun of Tom Cruise and Matthew McConaughey. But Aaron Taylor Johnson is like, he's a tremendous actor. Like I still love him like Kick-Ass. Kick-Ass is like my favorite role of him to this day. And him and Bullet Train was funny. Godzilla was okay. Age of Ultron was okay. Can't wait for Kraven the Hunter, by the way. So that's
now coming out at Christmas. Thanks for reminding me of that. By the way, that gets delayed again, right? There's no way that keeps its release date slot.
No, it's gonna keep it. I know it because there's nothing else. Only thing it's gonna compete with is Wicked.
Oh yeah, that's right. There is no big holiday releases. Oh no, it's gonna compete with Mufasa.
What about Sonic?
Oh yeah, Sonic. That's right.
And Sonic. Dude, this is going to be one of the weirdest holidays ever. Nosferatu, Mufasa, Sonic, and Kraven the Hunter. Like,
but Aaron Taylor Johnson is just like, he is great in this, and like he is like funny, and there's times where I forget he is British, and like is he British?
Yeah, he's British.
He does a sneakily good American accent. Because I remember when he did Kick-Ass, I was just like, I thought he was, because I thought the name Aaron, I'm like, oh, he's American. I'm like, no, he's British. And then like, he does a really good. And then the Texas accent when he's the cowboy in the movie is funny. He's like, well, I'm gonna tell you something. This is gonna be our fight. I'm like,
I'll tell you, all I heard there was Don Johnson in Django Unchained.
Yeah.
It was so good. And I mean, if we just want to talk about just incredible, like the plan that they have in order to get him to confess to the crime that he commits in this movie, I won't go into details as to how, but again, it's so ludicrous, like and so ridiculously unnecessary. And once again, it adds to the self-awareness where they're like, okay, we're gonna get him into this car and we're gonna have him film this stunt and we're gonna make him think that it's a blue screen, but it's gonna be a real stunt, and then we're gonna handcuff him to the wheel, and then we're gonna trick him into confessing. And the way that they build it up, and it all works. It's absolutely great. And the back and forth between him and Gosling, where Gosling's just roasting the ever-living shit out of him, and he's just like, oh, what are you gonna do? Kill me again? Which again goes back to it. And also, I love the fact that like when he fakes his death, and Emily Blunt is able to figure out that he's not dead because she recognizes the stunt sequence from that he did, because it's the same stunt sequence that he did on Miami Vice. And then on top of that, it's like, what? Well, you were fucking recording me? That you can't do that. That's entrapment. And it's like, no, you were recording you because you had the mic on, dipshit. Because you keep forgetting that he's mic'd up. It's perfect. It's fucking great.
There's another joke with that when they're going over the plane to get the confession where he's like, and we're going to beat the shit out of him. He's like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to get the confession. Then I'm going to beat the shit out of him. And at the end, he's like
3 times.
Yeah.
It's so good. And then also at the end, I love how too the movie has a chance where like Aaron Taylor Johnson is pointing a gun at him and Hannah Waddingham's like, shoot him. And he's like, I can't. Shoot him. He's just like another expendable guy. And he's like, I can't. He's the best stuntman I've ever worked with. Like, there's going to be a lot of people that are pissed off by that. I thought that was brilliant. Where I'm like, of course, he's so self-indulgent and is such a coward that he's not going to want to shoot someone for sheer fact of getting like blood on him or something like that, probably, And I will say, I missed the post-credit scene, but I did read up on the fact that there was a post-credit scene after this.
It was great.
It's so good. It's like, man, as if we thought Joey King getting run over by Brian Tyree Henry in an orange cart wasn't already brilliant enough at the end of Bullet Train. This arguably topped that. And it also tied in brilliantly because, of course, when they debut the movie at the end, Metal Storm, at Hall H in Comic-Con, at the end, who do they have replacing Aaron Taylor Johnson? None other than Jason Momoa. So I thought that was just brilliant in and of itself. Yeah, this movie was absolutely phenomenal. I absolutely loved every single minute of it. All the weak points, I say, were like they all got to me like explained away or ended up like building up to the final product. This is one of my favorite efforts of the year. I'm going to close out my thoughts with this, which is that I'm kind of mad at Dune 2 because Dune 2 was originally supposed to be last year. Because if not for Dune 2 coming out this year, and like I said, pretty much clearing every other movie off the board, yeah, this would be my favorite movie of the year. Like, I'm going to be very hard pressed. And also the fact that, again, tying back to the start of this conversation, the whole release date bit of it, which is that, again, this movie would have been my favorite of the year, whether it had opened in March or more traditionally in an August release date spot, because movies like this specifically, you know, Bullet Train and Suicide Squad are probably the most recent examples I can think of, opened in August. But the fact that this opened in May, I think is awesome. People are already predicting that it's going to bomb because people are used to like a certain type of movie opening in this slot. But honestly, I think that this movie is going to circulate around with just word of mouth alone. I really do. Like, I can't see how it wouldn't. So with that, yeah, it's not quite a 5. It's a 4.5 out of 5, but it's so close to being a 5. It is so close to being a 5. I'm going to go into my thoughts on I Saw the TV Globe, which I also got a chance to see early after this. But first, I want to get all your guys' final thoughts and star ratings for The Fall Guy. Luke, starting with you.
Yeah, it's also my number 2 movie of the year. Of course, if not for Dune, would be my number 1. And there's a few movies coming out that I think could challenge it. I hope it stands its ground, but I also hope other movies are good. It's a 4.5 out of 5 for me. Towards the end of the third act, I was like, yeah, this is going to be a 4.5.
Yeah,
so
sure.
It's my best David Leitch movie for now.
Yeah.
I need to rewatch it, but it'd probably stay there.
Yeah, I still have John Wick above this, and Deadpool 2, I'm always back and forth. But yeah, for his solo movies that he's directed, yeah, this is the best one that he's done, for sure. Kristen, your final thoughts and star ratings for it.
Yep, I agree. Like, it's like for me, like, since I do great, so to me, it's going like an A- right now, 4.5. I just loved every single aspect of this. Probably, like you guys all said, it's your number 2 spot if it were for Dune. So right now, sitting at number 2 for me. This is my favorite David Leitch film at this point, and I can't wait to see what he does next with just about everything he does. Like, I think what we saw with Bullet Train and now with this, it just shows that he is going to become one of the ultimate action comedy directors.
Yep, could not agree more. And Mac, your final thoughts and star ratings on The Fall Guy.
I think it's we didn't mention that it was based on the TV show it remade back in the 60s.
They had a good cameo with him at the end. It was pretty funny. I definitely will say it'll probably be it's like one of the better summer blockbuster films to come out. And it'll definitely have like that word of mouth, especially when it goes to streaming. If people are going to be looking for stuff to watch on vacation, because I'll probably have my family watch this when we go to Myrtle Beach because it's really, really good. But I'll probably give it like an A-.
A-. Yep, sounds about right. Yeah, no, like I said, 4.5 out of 5. Easily one of the, again, this is going to be one of my favorites of the year for quite a while. I'll be interested to see how many other movies can sneak in there, and even the ones that make my top 10, like once we get into the Oscar bait movies at the end of the year, how many of them will be able to like hit this high for me and hit this hard for me. Now, before we get out of here, I know I technically billed this as a double release, but let's face it, it was always going to be just solely Fall Guy. But I did get a chance to watch I Saw the TV Glow, which debuted at rave reviews in Sundance, and was premiering early at Angelica here in New York. I got to see it with a Q&A from the director after the fact, which made me almost want to shoot myself because of how boring and monotone it was. Now, here's what I'll say about this movie. It's another kind of self-referential movie that's kind of, I think, dealing with nostalgia in the sense of where you have these two characters that bond over this collective, corny, culty TV show. And then once it gets to the end, there's this back and forth revelation of, whether the events that they witness in the show are real and kind of how that affects it. And I think the movie is a very interesting commentary on, the idea of specifically later millennials and Gen Z, kind of, let's call it the growing up crisis that we have, where we're willing to forsake our natural maturation in favor of, adoration and admiration of, quote unquote, keeping our childhood alive with these, figments of our childhood, these cult-like properties. And I think the movie is really, really interesting in terms of how it breaks that down and how it develops that in terms of different characters, in terms of one character who just needs to get away and the other character who chooses to willingly stay and continue to fight out ultimately what turns out to be a pretty miserable existence. It's a pretty weird and interesting, wonky movie. It's got a lot of John Carpenter elements, a lot of cool practical effects, a lot of really awesome synthy sounds. I don't necessarily know if it comes together all the way at the end, because the ending goes into that bit where it's like, oh, it's ambiguous about whether what we witnessed was actually real or whether it all just was in the characters' heads. And of course it has to cut to black on a hard cliffhanger. And I'm like, but of course it does, because this is made by a millennial filmmaker, and every millennial filmmaker has to be completely angsty and be like, oh, I'm going to be like different and special and not give you guys a clear answer because I don't have to. And I'm like, well, of course that's going to be the case.
The tropes we've been falling into for the last few months of
exactly.
these like millennial filmmakers.
Exactly. But there was one other thing that I noticed, and I'm glad that I stayed for like the first 10 minutes of the Q&A after the fact, which is that I think that this is one of those situations where the filmmakers kind of set out to make a completely different movie than what we actually got, which is where I thought that I was getting something that, was about like kind of trying to come to terms with, maturing in an era where, again, people are kind of in this arrested development phase. But then the filmmakers are going in and being like, no, it was actually this story about like not feeling comfortable in your own skin if you're trans or gender fluid. And this might just be me as a straight cis male, but I didn't get that at all personally from this movie. And if that was its intent, it was so like low key and subtle that it didn't really ring true, I thought. And it's just kind of another interesting contribution to this weird year that A24 has been having so far. Again, the fact that the fact that Problemista is probably still my favorite A24 movie that's come out this year over, Love Lies Bleeding and Civil War and and now this. Yeah, it's been a weird year for A24 to say the least. And I do still think that they have some good efforts in them. But I have to say that like I didn't hate this movie. I didn't love this movie. I think I gave it like a 3.5 out of 5. But if this is the direction that they're going in, I don't necessarily know if I'm looking forward. Like I said, they still have a couple more chances to impress me. They had a trailer for a Julia Louis-Dreyfus movie that premiered for this movie called Tuesday, which actually looks kind of pretty cool. They also still have that Y2K movie that's coming out with Kyle Mooney's directing later on that just sounds fucking awesome. And there's a couple of other ones, but yeah, for the most part,
we got Maxine coming up.
We got Maxine coming out too. That is
in a
true.
different man, sing. So hopefully there's some. We got some good ones.
I'm hoping. I'm really hoping. But like I said, if this is the new track record and direction that A24 is going in, I'm worried. I'm worried to say the least. If Zone of Interest was the last great A24 movie that we got, well, I mean, true. If Ari Aster continues to the track record that he was going with Beau Is Afraid with his next movie Eddington, I mean, there could be hope, but only time will tell. So yeah, I saw the TV Globe. Can I recommend it? I don't necessarily know. I think it's interesting, but in terms of like having lasting value, that I don't really see happening. So yeah, that was kind of just like my brief thoughts on I Saw the TV Glow. But with that being said, guys, this is another great episode. This is official. Again, this is more of a low-key summer kickoff episode, but again, I feel like this is as good of a summer movie as we could get. It's gonna be an interesting summer to say the least. It's gonna be very reminiscent of summer of 2014, where there weren't a whole lot of like massive successes, but there could be a lot of chance for like some really low-key great movies that come out. Like Kingdom of the Planet. We got Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. We got Furiosa. We got Inside Out 2. We got the summer of Shyamalan with Trap. Deadpool, Twisters. Of course. How could we forget the Lee Isaac Chung directed Twisters? Why does it need to be called Twisters? Why can't it just be its own thing? I don't understand.
I'm not excited for Twisters.
Me neither. Not at all. I still.
Worst part is that Bill Paxton's dead. So it's
literally exactly. Not even Bill Paxton. Half the cast is dead. Bill Paxton, Philip Seymour Hoffman are all dead. Like everybody forgets that Philip Seymour Hoffman is in that movie. But yeah. It's gonna be an interesting summer, to say the least. Like I said, it's not like last summer where we kind of like had like a solid, consistent line of hits, but it's gonna be an interesting summer, to say the least. So with that being said, guys, thank you once again all for coming on. This is a great summer kickoff episode. I can't wait to see what the rest of the summer turns out. Hopefully, I will be slightly more awake and less tired. But Luke, starting with you, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
Well, now that summer's drawing near, my thesis is coming together nicely. I can maybe do another video in the summer. So look reviews on YouTube. But I will say that the Talking TV podcast is the only podcast where you will see a man do his dry cleaning mid-episode.
Yes,
So,
sir. Yes, sir. It's true. It's the only one. We show people in their real lives. We take away the illusion of professionality because that's all it is, an illusion after all. What's it called? Kristen, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
They can follow me at Miss Flamingo. I do my reviews on there and on TikTok and whatever. It's all on there. And then I'm also the co-host of the MK Productions podcast. I mean, look, there is my co-host right there. He's doing his laundry.
Yes, sir.
So he's got to get it done. But yeah, we will have some new episodes coming. We got some really awesome screeners in the works. So yeah, Mac and I are excited for the summer and hope you all tune into that. So, but as always, thank you, Dom, for having me. And I'm sure I'll be here soon again.
Yes, indeed you will. And Mac, like I said, you were in the car the last time for Iron Claw. You were doing your laundry for this time. I don't know what we're going to be seeing you do next time, but I'm sure it's going to be something equally as interesting. Where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
I want to thank you for having me on. It was so much fun. I do apologize for the less than optimal settings. I was
Nonsense.
I gotta do it.
Nonsense.
No, you can find me on YouTube, Mac Movie Reviews. I just did my fourth episode, my Flashback Friday. Went over Gem and the Holograms. Had a good time doing it. I'm also the co-host of the MK Productions podcast, so tune in for that. You also find me on Instagram, the Tactic, and Letterbox under Mac Movie Reviews. And come on and buy. I got cookies. I promise. It's not weird. Just watch my movies.
I've had their cookies. They're quite good. Like I said, all these guys are great. They're all the best at what they do. Please go follow them on all of their channels. And of course, follow me with everything going on at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms, at Official Talkin TV Podcast across all platforms. Subscribe to us if you're watching us on YouTube. Follow us if you're watching this on Twitch. And this episode will be available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts tomorrow. And as always, people, 12 seasons of a short film, and watch more fucking movies. We'll see you guys next weekend for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Take care.